Amazing Fantasy 15, Spider-Man's first ever appearance, is speculated to be released next month on Veve. Now, whether or not that's going to happen, we don't have 100% confirmation yet. But what I want to do in this video is talk to you more about what does happen if this is the case, how you should prepare, how you can take advantage, and some of the strategies that I'm going to be using throughout if this does happen to become true. So let's talk about it. Welcome in everyone, my name is Andy, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come watch this video on the channel. Just before we get started, if you are enjoying the content, you want to support me further, you can hit that subscribe button. If you want to support me further than that, you can join the membership. There is speculation that we're going to be getting Amazing Fantasy 15 on Veve. Now, David Yu has sort of confirmed it in a way, as I would say. There's been sort of teasers within the community updates. They've talked about it a little bit further on some podcasts that they've joined. So there is some speculation that it's going to be coming, and although we believe that it's going to be coming no matter what, when that it actually drops will become the important aspect of it. And I wanted to be ahead of the game to help you in this scenario if this is the case, because there's going to be a lot more people coming onto the platform. There's going to be a lot more people who are having this for the first time, and this will give you a better insight as to how the markets have moved historically, how you can sort of prepare for it and sort of be successful with it. Let's talk first about the comic book itself. Some of you may not know what it is. Some of you want to understand just in general how this actually plays a significant role. Now, Amazing Fantasy 15 was released in 1962, and this is the first ever appearance of Spider-Man that we've ever seen. And this is probably the most significant comic book in the world for a couple reasons. If we have a look here, we can see that Spider-Man is actually the world's most popular superhero. He rose to fame obviously in the 2000s with the Tobey Maguire films, and then we saw Andrew Garfield and now Tom Holland playing him. But we can see here from the monthly Google searches, 5.1 million average monthly Google searches with Spider-Man compared to Batman at 3.4 million. Now that can be backed up even further with the Marvel and DC debate, where Marvel kind of trumps the world when it comes to the popularity of them all, with 51 countries compared to 9 for DC. And again, if we go further down with the most popular superheroes in the world, Spider-Man completely trumps the rest, with 57 countries being the most popular superhero, the closest second being Wonder Woman at 15 countries, Batman with 11, Iron Man at 10, and Superman at 6. So we can see here from just alone that Spider-Man is already the most popular superhero by far and is loved by the world insane amounts. Even in regards to this, we can see here that the worldwide box office is just insane when it comes to Spider-Man. We have 1.8 billion for No Way Home, 1.1 billion for Far From Home, and then of course we're still having hundreds and hundreds of millions, even with the ones released back in 2004-2007 era. Spider-Man has continuously been one of the best superheroes that there are, so having the first ever comic book just in general of Spider-Man is insane. On Veve, we have had the opportunity to have the Amazing Spider-Man 1, which was the first Spider-Man in its own series. Now, of course, this wasn't the first ever appearance, but this is already doing tremendously well, with the secret rare reaching about 4.4k and an all-time high, I think around 15k on the app. Of course, a lot of people are going to be wanting the first, as we've talked about the first appearances of a lot of things in the past and how truly significant this actually is. When we talk about that then, you might be wondering, okay, what is the actual value of the physical copy of Spider-Man? Is it one of the top in the world? Well, that's exactly the case. Last year, we reached an all-time record sale of $3.6 million for Amazing Fantasy 15. I believe this was a 9.6 grading that it actually had in near mint condition. There are no copies currently in CGC with a 9.8, which is the next grade above. So this is basically the highest that we've been able to see. And last year that actually surpassed Action Comics 1, which was Superman's first appearance, for 3.25 million earlier that year. So reaching that 3.6 million, having its record sale at that, with a 2.0 grading sitting at around 14,000 currently, is insane to think about just how popular and just how in demand this comic book actually is, and the significance of it even to this day, and what I believe will be decades to come from now. Alright, so we have the background of the comic book, the significance of it, what it is. Let's talk a little bit further about Veve itself and what's been happening as of recently. Kelly, or Veve Fox, has actually done a video recently discussing the downloads of Veve in the app itself, and we can see here over the last few months we've had a few spikes here and there, but it's been kind of steady when it comes to the number of downloads that we've been receiving. And actually, just as of recently, we can see this spike that we've found in the downloads just for this month. This can come with all the promotions, everything that's happening, and we've also got a lot coming in the future when it comes to the promos at Comic-Con, which is happening I believe this week. as well as other promotions like the Jurassic Park promotions, and with the KYC and MTL being released, we're seeing more and more people actually gaining traction towards what Veve is. And this isn't just backed up by the data of the number of downloads that have been happening. Puddin Cheeks, an incredible person within the community who releases this spreadsheet every single day, found that yesterday when I wrote the script for this video was the highest number of gems that had been put into the app since I believe May time, and yesterday actually trumped that again with 1.17 million gems purchased, with the trading fee volume being somewhere between 1.2 and 4 million, obviously depending on the percentages and the things that people are selling. But I still think this is incredible to see that this is the case, and we're actually seeing this growth happen and more people coming into the app or purchasing gems into the app now that KYC and MTL is available. Now there's two other main reasons why people are speculating that August the 1st will be the day that Amazing Fantasy 15 drops. And the first reason is because of KYC itself. Now KYC is know your customer. It's what we've talked about before. It's proving your identity that you're the person who's owning this account and is on this account, and that allows MTL to happen, which is the money transmitter license where you can take money out with the cryptocurrencies or wire it if you'd like to put it straight into your bank. But the really interesting thing here is that starting the 30th of July, only KYC verified users will be able to access all of Veve's features, including participating in drops and buying and selling in the market. Now, why would there be a deadline of the 30th of July? Why are they now restricting people from entering into the drops? Of course, there's going to be security reasons. There's going to be things that they're just wanting to develop forward with. They're wanting to make sure there's less and less people who can use 55 phones that can actually go for the drops. I totally get that. I totally understand that. There's those easy reasons to determine. The other really interesting one is the one on the screen right now. Spider-Man Day is August the 1st. That is the 60th year celebration of Spider-Man first being released with his first ever appearance of Amazing Fantasy 15. Now, with Comic-Con just happening right now, we've been confirmed that there are big displays happening at Comic-Con. Marvel are going to be discussing it a little bit more, as well as more promotions that are continuing to happen, and KYC being announced. I think this would be the absolute perfect time for Amazing Fantasy 15 to be dropped on the app. Not only are you going to be able to bring in comic book fans from all over the world, people at Comic-Con are going to be able to experience what Veve are actually trying to build with all of their favorite characters from every single universe within Marvel, as well as so much more that's going to be happening over the next few years. And because of the credibility, which we talked about last week in that video about how this will develop Veve's credibility further with KYC and MTL, I believe this could truly be the perfect time to drop the most expensive comic book in the world on the app. Of course, this is total speculation, so we don't actually have the confirmation yet. But now what I want to show you is probably the juicy part that a lot of people are interested in, and that is about the market itself. Now, we've covered the market a lot on this channel before. We've discussed it a lot, I've traded a ton, I've talked to a lot of people who do the same, so we usually find these patterns that happen, and I want to share them with you today. If we are taking Amazing Fantasy 15 to be the same levels as the likes of Marvel Comics 1, Walt Disney, and the biggest of the biggest grails, which I believe it should be the case because it's the most expensive comic book in the world, then we're going to have to try to run with the historical value that we have for that and how that played out before. With Marvel's Comic 1, that was the first ever comic books that were released on Veve. No one really knew what they actually were, and Marvel's Comic 1 actually sat at around 4 gems after the drop had happened. I managed to get 8, I believe, on the drop on that day. Now I'm lucky to get any drop at all, but it is interesting to see how that shifted. Now a lot more people are knowledgeable on comics themselves, the importance and significance of them, as well as the growth and popularity of Veve. So when it came to Walt Disney, with a lot of new users coming onto the app at that time, Walt Disney initially had just the usual people, the panic sellers who sell right away because they just want to flip for a good profit. After that, it really solidifies itself as there's so much demand and not enough supply. The prices shoot up and stay up for a while before they slowly and gradually come back down to a level that suits the supply and demand with what it's at. Difference we might see here is that Veve has been on a sort of decline when it comes to downloads, prices of collectibles for a while. And Amazing Fantasy 15 being the most expensive comic book in the world, the first ever appearance of Spider-Man, and just an incredible amount of hype that's coming around Veve right now, this could actually mean that the demand for this is so high, supply will be in real shock, especially in the first few weeks of this dropping, and especially if there's a lot of new users who are coming into this place who have KYC'd and who have the money to put into something like this. This is why I believe it will be very quick to shoot up in price if you are not careful with what you're doing. As even over the last few days, we saw the Disney posters rapidly shoot up in price purely because of the speculation and the significance of what they are. Now, I do believe these will go down if Amazing Fantasy 15 is released, but I'll discuss that in just a little bit. Usually what happens with Veve is the comic book gets announced, then a couple days later, the Medium article gets released with the number of editions that are going to be actually available for it. And what tends to happen is when it gets initially announced, especially for something big, there's a really sharp rundown of all the collectibles. So say for instance, right now you're buying a C-3PO at $600 or 600 gems. After it's announced that this is going to happen, you'll often see a very sharp rundown in prices of people trying to get gems rapidly to be able to purchase the drop that's going to be happening with Amazing Fantasy 15. Depending on the supply that people have to actually sell these things off and how motivated they are to get these drops, that's how quickly these big collectibles will go down. Yes, you're going to see dips in the smaller ones, but of course, if you're looking to stack something like Amazing Fantasy 15, you're probably going to have to sell something big. So even like the Walt Disney statues, the other secret rare comics, you most likely will see quite a sharp decrease in their prices of people trying to sell them off very quickly. This is also because word of mouth will most likely spread very rapidly when it comes to Amazing Fantasy 15 if it's announced, and the significance of it being the most expensive comic book in the world. And that price action of a lot of the big collectibles will most likely take an even bigger hit in the short term for it. Once the Medium article is released, people can see the prices and the number of editions that are going to be happening. You'll most likely see another quick rundown of the prices as people try to accumulate enough in order to get involved in the drop. I'm hoping that Veve continue to keep the prices in the range of between about 7 and I think 16 is what they'd had, or 15 for the Star Wars drops. I'm totally okay with that being the case, since the significance of this comic and the number of new users that are actually going to be coming in here will probably increase if this is to be announced. So you most likely will see a sharp decrease again of some of these collectibles once the Medium article is released, as the hype starts to build, the dates drop for it, and people know when they need to get their gems by. After the drop has happened, we've talked a little bit about this. Flippers are going to try to get out as quickly as they can, and that means the price determination won't really be dead set yet. You often find in the first hour or so that the price fluctuates so much because people don't really know what price to put it at. Some people are just instantly buying in because it doesn't matter what price it's at. Other people are sort of waiting for the bottom, see if they can time it right. Others are trying to sell right away at high price as possible so they can get out and they can get liquid and they can go and buy other stuff that is significantly decreased since the article has actually come out. But again, because of the significance of this comic, I think there's going to be so much demand that the price will actually struggle to settle for quite a while, just purely based on the demand itself and the influx of users that will be going for a drop like this. Over time, I suspect this to be easily in the range of Marvel's Comic 1 and higher. Marvel's Comic 1 is still an incredibly significant comic in what it actually represents, but Amazing Fantasy 15 being the #1 comic of all time, the first ever appearance of Spider-Man, created by Stan Lee, as well as just the overall understanding of Veve and what they're aiming for, this could truly be the grail of all grails on the app for the time being. Again, I could be totally wrong in that guess, but just the way that I'm seeing this playing out and the way that Veve is slowly starting to shift and the hype that's coming towards it, I could see this being quite a boom for the short term and what this could actually be. So what am I doing? What am I going to be planning to do? What am I doing currently to actually gain some traction and gain a better understanding of what to do at the time? Well, I've been selling off some of my duplicate higher price things. Because there's this sort of increase in hype at the moment, I believe a lot of people are buying in, and that means a lot of prices are running up. So I've been selling some of my duplicate Disney Golden Moments, I've been selling some of my secret rare comics, and some of my duplicate common comics that sell for a fair bit, so I can get enough gems to try to stack as many as I possibly can when it comes to that drop. If for some reason Amazing Fantasy 15 doesn't come and it's to come out next year or another year from that, prices for some of the things will most likely continue to drop at the time. I will most likely buy into the other Disney Golden Moments that I don't have to finish that set if this is not to come out. Try to time it right so that I'm buying in at a decent price that I'm okay to hold at. I truly believe in the long-term vision that Veve are creating, and therefore Amazing Fantasy 15 for me is something that I'm really wanting to get into. I had never read a comic book in my life since I got into Veve. I've now read 2 on the app directly. That'll be Marvel Comics 1 and Amazing Spider-Man 1. And it's something that I'm extremely interested in seeing. David and Dan both have their own copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, and it's just insane to even think about. And the fact that we now have the opportunity to have some of the best comic books in the world and a potential of having Amazing Fantasy 15 is just surreal to me. So I really am going to be trying to stack as many of these as I possibly can as the strategy that I'm sort of going for. I hope for all of the new users this was a good rundown of understanding what to look for when it comes to things being released on the app, how to use some historical data to back yourself up, and how to just understand the market a little bit more, especially if this is the first time you're coming into this place and you're trying to understand, how the market works, how it differentiates from other markets, and to be a little bit better at analysing it. Of course, we're all just learning along this journey. None of us are experts, just showing our own understanding of what's been going on. But I hope this has helped in everything that you're doing. Another video on the screen right now will be something you'll love to watch. Have a fantastic day.